Hello lads, ladies, gents, ladetts, whoever, whatever, welcome back to another video. Today we're going to dive back into Digimon World 3. This is a remake of an older video, so if you want to watch the original video for whatever reason, the link will be in the description below. Digimon World 3 moves into a different game genre yet again. Unlike the first game where we were a pet raising simulator and the second where we were a dungeon crawler, the third game moves into a more traditional JRPG. However, unlike the second game, we only have one Digimon out at a time. Digimon World 3 released in the middle of 2002 for the NA and Japanese markets, while at the end of 2002 for the PAL regions. Starting our adventure, we get to meet the player character Junior standing out front of a game center waiting for his friends. Upon them arriving and entering the game center, we find out that we're entering a virtual MMO, which is probably my favorite way the series as a whole has done this so far. In order to get our first Digimon, we have to pick one of 3 different packs. These packs consist of 3 different Digimon, as you'll have a team that you can rotate as you explore. Those teams are known as the Balance Pack, the Powerful Pack, and the Maniac Pack, each giving a slightly different playstyle, at least in the early game. Every Digimon on your team will have its own unique stats and abilities as you make your way through the game. As an example, Patamon is a great support Digimon as they can heal, whereas Digimon like Agumon are great for raw damage output. Now, no one Digimon is useless and will always have their place on a team, but it'll be up to you to figure out your team's strengths and weaknesses as you go through to see what will work and what won't. It doesn't take too long after getting into game for the plot to start taking place. Shortly after our arrival, we find out that there has been an error that has occurred. The game master makes an announcement saying that everyone will be trapped in the game for now, however they are working on it. This is kind of similar to what has happened in Digimon World 2. At this point, it is suspected that a hacker by the name of Lucky Mouse is behind the error. Junior isn't all too phased. Assuming everything is fine, we go on our merry way and explore the world we find ourselves in. We go through different locations, fighting leaders that act very much like gym leaders from Pokemon, and also doing side quests for Digimon and other tamers within this world. Now, just to give a quick spoiler warning, because we're going to jump into some of the late game plot real quick, if you don't want to be spoiled, please go to the timestamp shown on screen right now. Eventually, after progressing far enough, we get to meet the demon of every 5-year-old's daydream, Lord Megadeth. Yes, that's his actual name. Now, I'm not going to give away everything that actually happens. I think this game is worth playing for yourself. However, what I do want to say is this game has some pretty interesting twists and turns when it comes to the hierarchy of who's doing what, so definitely worth playing. Moving on from the story and plot, you'll notice that visually the game uses an anime art style like the previous game, and it is especially on show during exploration. Most of the exploration is done through a 2D overworld which uses sprite-based character models while using pre-rendered backgrounds to walk on top of. Most screens you traverse are rather small, so it doesn't take too long to get from one place to another. This is actually really nice given the fact that this is a PS1 game, so loading times can be a real pain in the butt. There is a fantastic variety in the locations we will visit as we go from cities to fields to forests to beaches to haunted ruins and mountains, all the while having a digital and technological flair to them. We see that computer parts are scattered throughout, and it's nice to see this kind of return instead of having the kind of monotony of Digimon World 2. Although 2 City did look great, I think 3 absolutely nails the visuals. Although I think I would say I still prefer the first game for its overall incorporation of this aesthetic. While exploring, you'll notice the movement has seen a massive improvement from that of the second game. We now have full 360-degree movement that is very fluid and very quick, compared to that of the second game where it felt like we were moving through sludge. Overall, there are certain parts where it might be a bit hard to see your character when you go behind something. However, you do have a little kind of ball thing that sits near your character's head that will allow you to kind of know where you're at. Although this can be annoying because sometimes there are certain mazes that are underneath the stuff that's in the foreground, which makes it really hard to navigate, and you sort of have to just piss fart around until you get through. You'll notice that Digimon are no longer visible in the overworld like they were in the previous 2 games, and this is because we've moved to a random encounter system like you would with most RPGs of its era. So you've been running around and you get into a battle. What does the combat actually entail? Like any turn-based RPG at the time, we'll get a list of commands of things we can do. We have attack, tech, DV, which stands for Digivolve, tag, item, and run. Most of these are pretty self-explanatory, so I'm not going to go into super massive detail about all of them, but DV and Tech are the 2 that I do want to talk about. As early on, your normal attacks won't do a lot of damage, so you're going to rely on Tech, and Tech works pretty much like magic in any other RPG. This is super useful as you'll do great damage, especially in the early game. Now, DVs are pretty much the most complex part of the combat. Essentially, you'll use a turn in order to evolve into a stronger Digimon. Now, they will have a separate stat pool to that of your base form, so it is worth making sure that you do train them up as well. They do actually run on a separate experience pool, which is a little frustrating and can be very time consuming when you want to level them up, but by the time you get to the late game, you'll have it down pretty easy, so it could be worse. If you digivolve in a battle, it will actually end at the end of that battle. However, if you want to start off with a champion level Digimon or higher, you may want to go through your status screen to fix that. I want to give a shout out to Douglas628 who actually let me know, because I completely forgot about that when I actually did this video originally. Now, DV isn't actually the only way to digivolve in this game. You'll notice underneath your health bar, and where you can see the indicator for your other Digimon, you have this little bar that fills up with sparkles. This is what we call the burst meter. This is a really interesting mechanic that I actually really enjoy. Essentially, once this meter fills, we will go into what we call a burst mode. This will allow us to digivolve into our mega form from whatever we're in. This is really cool, as we can start to deal insane damage and come from behind and actually win fights we probably shouldn't. However, you need to make sure you manage this correctly, because you don't want it to go off when you don't need it to. So it's worth making sure that you keep an eye on this as well. Typically, however, it won't go off unless you are in a really tough fight, as it can be pretty hard to build this meter from just regular grinding fights. There is also one last way to digivolve. You might be asking how. We've covered digivolve, the DV button, and we've also covered the burst, but some of you might not know you can actually digivolve through tag. Tag is a pretty interesting way of doing it, as it can be a relatively efficient way to do it, especially if a certain Digimon is in trouble and you might be going up against an enemy that's a little bit stronger than you expected. We also get access to the last way of digivolving through tag, which is the DNA digivolve. We had the DNA digivolve in Digimon World 2 as well, however we would have a permanent outcome from that. In this, however, we actually get a single turn use of a specific Digimon. Now, this Digimon will typically be extremely powerful and do massive amounts of damage, and you may end up relying on it for some of the harder fights. However, it does come at the cost of a lot of MP. Also, it is only available for specific Digimon that can fuse. This is not available for all Digimon. This is actually also probably the single best way to digivolve into a champion if you have it available, as it will allow you to do it and use that DNA digivolution, attack, and then come out with the champion on the other end. This is also super useful for when you need to level up your champions, because as mentioned, they do run on a separate experience pool to that of the rookies. Both are relatively straightforward to level up, as they work the same as any other RPG. However, it's important to know as you level up, you'll earn TP. These are called training points. With enough training points, you can go to the gym, and at the gym, you can level up what stats you want. I'm not actually going to go into what all the stats do. I highly recommend just looking it up, because there's a lot here, and I don't really want to spend 40 minutes going through every single stat, what it does, how it affects your Digimon. Most of it's pretty straightforward, but you do want to make sure you train efficiently. It might be worth looking up a little bit of a basic guide to know what to do and what to train. You won't really soft lock yourself unless you deliberately try to, but it might still be worth just making sure you know what you're getting yourself into. Beyond training, the only other way to really raise stats is to use equipment. Now, it's a bit of a strange thing to have in this game, honestly, given the fact we're using, monsters to fight, but we can equip different weapons and armor sets and accessories to our Digimon in order to give them stat boosts and effects. Not every Digimon can use all the different items that are available, as certain Digimon can use certain items. Thankfully, each store does show you what will work and what won't. You'll also get to see what stat boosts you will get upon purchasing and equipping these items, so you don't really have to commit if you don't need to. You might need to grind for money in order to buy some of these items, as they can be rather expensive. Beyond the combat and the exploration, the story itself, there are some side things you actually get to do in this game as well. We have the card minigame, fishing, tree kicking, which kind of has to do with the card minigame. It's a little complicated. You'll understand if you play the game. Now, one thing I actually failed to mention earlier in the video is the soundtrack. The soundtrack is actually surprisingly good, and the reason why I say surprisingly is because in the previous two games we didn't really get a ton of variety, whereas here we actually have a ton of variety. Each song fits pretty much what you're doing and where you're located. The only thing I will say is the battle music might get on your nerves a little bit by the end of the game, due to the fact you will hear it a lot. The soundtrack was composed by Satoshi Ishikawa, and I apologize, I probably did butcher his name. He used to work in the sound department at BEC, doing sound effects and also composing music. From my research, Digimon World 3 is the only Digimon World game that he worked on, and honestly, I think he did an incredible job. He went on to become a freelance artist, from my understanding, and from all I can see, he's been working on the Fate series. I don't know if it's games or the anime, but either way, that's pretty cool, and more power to him. So up to this point, I've been pretty damn positive about this game. It's not without its flaws, however, as I know the pacing can be a little bit off, the grinding can be a little bit too heavy in certain sections. Furthermore, I don't think the game does the best job of explaining everything. However, it's not so complex that you can't figure figure it out on your own in your own time. And plus, playing in the modern world, you get to just hop on the internet and look up a guide if you're not too sure. But overall, I do highly recommend it, and if you can get your hands on the game for pretty cheap, I think it's definitely worth your time. So with that, lads, ladies, gents, ladetts, whoever, whatever, it brings us to the end of another video. I hope you enjoyed these remakes of the Digimon World trilogy videos I did. Not that many of you would have watched the originals. If you've ever played any of the games, let me know in the comment section below. Or who is your favorite Digimon? Personally, I love Agumon because he is a cute little bastard. If you enjoyed the video, please consider hitting that like button. If you want to go that extra step, hit that subscribe button. If you want to go that extra mile, you can support me on Ko-fi for just $1 a month like these lovely people here. And with that, I hope you stay safe out there, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.